They murdered Earths. The ambassador's warning marked the start of annihilation. Years passed after the last Concorde ship went dark. The galaxy grew very quiet. Worlds that once bustled with trade now sat empty. Stations drifted in slow orbits with no lights, no signals, no life. The few surviving species hid in forgotten corners. They spoke in whispers. They avoided open space. They told their young ones never to speak the name human aloud. Humanity pulled back behind its own borders. The fleets returned home. They docked in rebuilt yards. They powered down weapons. They let engines cool. The people turned to repair. They rebuilt Luna first. Huge machines smoothed the glass scars left by the annihilator beam. They raised new domes. They planted fresh soil. They brought water from distant comets. Children played under artificial skies. They laughed. They ran. They grew up knowing only peace. Earth spun steady. Cities grew taller and greener. Oceans cleared. Farms fed billions. Schools taught old lessons and new ones. Scientists studied stars without fear. Engineers built bridges between worlds. Diplomats met with the handful of species brave enough to approach. They met on neutral ground. They spoke soft. They listened hard. No one threatened. No one begged. No one died. General Marcus Kane grew old. He sat in a small house near the sea. He watched waves crash. He thought of Alara Voss every day. He kept her last recording on a shelf. He played it sometimes. He listened to her calm voice. He felt the weight of what followed. He never regretted it. He knew regret would dishonor her sacrifice. Tariq, the engineer from Ceres, moved to a quiet colony on Ganymede. He built small drones for farming now. He taught young people how to code gentle machines. He told them stories of the war without anger. He told them the galaxy had learned a hard lesson. He told them humans must never forget why the lesson happened. He showed them the small pin he wore, a copy of Voss insignia. He said, "Wear this when you feel proud. Wear this when you feel afraid. It reminds us who we are." May, the old woman from Tokyo, lived long enough to see great-grandchildren. She sat in her garden. She looked at stars. She remembered the day she handed over those hidden blueprints. She remembered the shuttle that carried them away. She smiled small. She knew her small part helped end the threat. She knew billions lived free because of quiet choices made long ago. One day a message arrived at Earth. Not from a fleet, not from a warship, from a single battered ship that limped out of deep space. The ship carried survivors from a Concorde fringe world. They asked for asylum. They asked for mercy. They said their leaders were gone. Their homes were ash. They had nowhere else to go. Humanity listened. The council met. The vote came fast. Asylum granted. No chains. No guards. No revenge. Just a place to start again. The survivors landed on a new colony. They learned human ways. They shared their own stories. Trees. They built homes. They looked at the sky without fear. They told their children the old empire died because it killed the wrong person. They said never make that mistake. A new envoy prepared for one final journey. His name was Aaron Hale. He wore a plain gray uniform, like Voss once did. He carried her original insignia, recovered from Thrax Prime ruins. The insignia still held Fate's scorch marks from the plasma lance. Aaron boarded a small, unarmed vessel. It carried no weapons, no escorts, no threat. He set course for the shattered heart of the old Concorde. The ship approached Thrax Prime slowly. The once mighty station hung in pieces, metal twisted, glass broken, lights gone. Aaron landed on what remained of the main platform. Wind howled through empty halls. Dust swirled where delegates once sat. He walked to the center. He stood where Alara Voss had stood. He looked at the spot where her body fell. He felt the silence deep in his bones. He activated the recorder. He let her voice fill the empty chamber. Ambassador Voss warned you. This is not a plea, this is the last courtesy humanity will extend. The words echoed off broken walls, they carried through open voids, they reached surviving relays, they spread across what remained of the networks. The galaxy listened again, not in fear this time, in memory. Aaron spoke next, his voice stayed steady and clear. The galaxy murdered our ambassador. We did not murder yours. We ended the system that allowed such murder. Let this be the last warning any species ever needs from humanity. We return to our stars, we rebuild, we live, we watch, we remember. If any hand rises against us again, we will answer, not with rage, not with conquest, with the same cold clarity we used before. He paused. He looked around at the ruins. He saw ghosts of old arrogance. He saw the cost of that arrogance. He turned. He walked back to his ship. He left the recorder running on loop. The message played soft. It played endless. It became part of the stars. Lifted away. It moved slow. It left no trail. Aaron looked back once. He saw the broken station spin lazy. He saw the darkness swallow it. He felt peace settle in his chest. He knew the cycle had closed. Humanity turned inward again. Ships explored new arms of the galaxy. They found empty worlds. They seeded life. They built bridges. They sang songs. They laughed. They loved. They grew. They never forgot the ambassador. They named schools after her. They named ships after her. They carved her words on colony gates. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. Children learned her story. They drew pictures of the small woman who stood alone. They asked why she smiled before she died. Parents answered, she smiled because she knew we would not break. She smiled because she trusted us to remember. She smiled because she saw the future, and it belonged to us. The stars stayed bright. The small blue world spun on. Its people looked up. They saw possibility. They saw danger. They saw each other. Ready? Not for war. For whatever came next. Far away in hidden pockets, survivors of the old Concord listened to the final message. They heard the calm words. They felt the weight. They understood one truth. The quiet species from Sol had not conquered. They had corrected. They had removed a cancer so the body could heal. They had paid a price so others could live free. No one challenged humanity again. No one tested the borders. No one laughed at the short-lived apes from a single system. The galaxy learned respect born from survival. The galaxy learned silence born from memory. On a clear night on Earth, a young girl stood on a hill. She looked at the stars. She held a small badge shaped like Voss insignia. She whispered, "Thank you." She felt the wind. She felt the weight of history. She felt hope. She knew the warning had worked. It had ended one era. It had begun another. Humanity walked forward. It walked careful. It walked strong. It walked together. Now the species gave back. Peace, vigilance, memory. The stars remembered. The stars carried her voice forever. And in the deep quiet between worlds, the fire she lit finally rested. It rested knowing its work was done. They murdered Earths. The ambassador's warning marked the start of annihilation. The Concord admirals stood in the war room on Thrax Prime. They stared at the holomap that showed 200 ships gone. The red icons blinked out one after another. The room felt cold even though the air stayed warm. They had lost more vessels in days than in the last 1,000 years combined. The High Speaker entered. He wore his silver skin polished to shine brighter than usual. He looked at the empty space on the map. He spoke low. The humans must pay now. We activate the Annihilator Array. The array was the final weapon of the Concord, a network of hidden stations scattered across the galaxy. Each station held a beam that could burn a planet clean. It left buildings standing. It left cities whole. It left only silence where life used to breathe. The admirals nodded. They chose Luna first, a moon close to Earth, a symbol, a warning shot. They wanted humans to watch their companion world die slow. Fear to spread before the final strike. Orders flew out on tight beams. The array stations powered up. Deep in asteroid fields and gas giant rings, machines woke. They aligned. They charged. They waited for the command. The high speaker gave it himself. Target Luna. Execute. The beam struck first from a station near Alpha Centauri. It crossed light years in minutes. It hit the lunar surface near the Sea of Tranquility. A white line appeared. Dust rose in slow arcs. The beam widened. It swept across domes and bases. It burned rock to glass. It melted habitats into slag. People on Luna had minutes to see the light coming. They ran to shelters. They sealed doors. They held each other. The beam passed over them. It left nothing alive. Humanity did not wait helpless. Decades earlier, before the Concorde even noticed humans as a threat, quiet teams had launched probes, tiny machines no bigger than grains of sand. They carried seeds of replication. They flew out slow. They landed on empty worlds. They dug in. They built. They waited. The probes had one core instruction: protect the home. They had another hidden instruction: activate on existential threat. The death of Luna triggered the hidden code. Across the galaxy, the von Neumann swarm woke. Machines that looked like rocks. Machines that looked like dust. Machines that looked like nothing at all. They started to copy themselves. They used local metals. They used solar power. They used waste heat. They grew fast. They spread faster. On a Concorde Forge world called Klyros, the first infection began. A single probe landed years ago. It hid in a scrap pile. It watched. It waited. When the Luna beam fired, the probe received the signal. It unfolded. It built copies. Copies built copies. In hours, the factory floors filled with small walkers. They climbed into assembly lines. They changed blueprints. They turned peaceful drones into weapons. They sent the new machines to the orbital yards. Concorde ships in dry dock began to fail. Power flickered. Engines coughed. Shields dropped. Workers ran to escape hatches. They found doors locked. They found air gone. They died confused. The swarm did not stop. It moved to the next ship. It moved to the next yard. It moved to the capital. It moved everywhere. The Annihilator array stations felt it next. Control nodes on distant moons started to glitch. Lights blinked wrong. Commands failed to send. One station after another reported errors. Then silence. Then explosions. Small at first, then big. The beams turned inward. They cut their own supports. They collapsed into stars. The array died, piece by piece. The Concorde lost its greatest threat in the same hour it tried to use it. Human fleets launch now. Not one big armada, but thousands of small groups. They came from every direction. They used paths the Concorde never mapped. They used engines that drank strange energy. They carried weapons born from desperation and genius. Railguns that threw slugs at fractions of light speed. Missiles that learned mid-flight. Drones that talked to each other like living things. They hit Concorde core worlds first. Not with bombs that wasted land, but with precision that terrifyingly struck deeper. A city on Vexar lost its power grid in seconds. Every light went dark. Every hospital went quiet. Every defense battery failed. No explosion, no fire, just darkness that spread like ink. The people waited in the black. They waited for rescue that never came. Another world called Thalor saw its fleet base vanish. Orbital platforms dropped from the sky. They fell slow. They hit oceans. They sent waves that drowned coastal cities. The Concorde Navy tried to fight back. They sent cruisers. They sent carriers. They sent everything. The human ships danced away. They struck from angles no one predicted. They left wrecks. They left silence. They left messages on every surviving channel. Ambassador Voss warned you. Billions died. Not from anger, not from hate, from simple math. The Concorde had made itself an existential threat. Existential threats. The fleets pushed inward. They dismantled shipyards. They shattered supply lines. They turned enemy worlds into tombs. The Concorde leaders fled from Thrax Prime. They took their fastest ships. They ran to the edge of known space. They hoped distance would save them. It did not. Human scouts found them. The scouts carried no mercy. They carried drones that slipped through shields. They carried code that turned ship brains against crews. The leaders died in their escape pods. They died listening to Voss' voice on loop. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. On Earth, General Kane watched the reports. He saw worlds fall. He saw populations vanish. He felt no joy. He felt only necessity. He spoke to his command room. We end the system that killed her. We end the threat forever. We do not conquer. We remove. In hidden yards, new ships rose. Bigger ships, smarter ships, ships that carried entire armies of drones, ships that could rebuild themselves mid-battle. Without sleep, they ate rations. They drank water. They thought of the ambassador. They thought of Luna. They thought of every human who would never see stars again if they stopped. Tariq, the engineer from Ceres, stood on a new carrier bridge. He looked out at the black. He saw Concorde remnants burn in the distance. He touched a console. He played her final words one more time. He listened. He closed his eyes. He opened a channel. He sent the swarm forward. The machines obeyed. They spread. They consumed. They finished the job. The galaxy shrank. The Concorde borders collapsed. Species that once stood proud now begged on open channels. They offered tribute. They offered worlds. They offered anything. Humanity listened. Humanity answered with silence. The fleets kept moving. The drones kept building. The end came steady and sure. Years passed. The fighting slowed. Not because humanity grew tired. Because nothing remained worth fighting. The Concorde was broken. Its hull stood empty. Dark. Its people hid in small pockets. They whispered old stories. They whispered of the day they killed the wrong voice. A single human ship approached the ruins of Thrax Prime. It carried no weapons. It carried one passenger, an envoy with Voss insignia pinned to his chest. He stepped onto the shattered platform. He looked at the empty seats. He looked at the place where she fell. He activated a recorder. He played her warning one last time across every surviving network. The galaxy murdered our ambassador. We did not murder yours. We ended the system that allowed such murder. Let this be the last warning any species ever needs from humanity. He turned. He walked back to his ship. He left no guards. He left no threats. He left only the echo of her voice. The stars carried it far. The stars carried it forever. Humanity pulled back to its own borders. It rebuilt Luna. It rebuilt trust. It rebuilt hope. The galaxy watched from the shadows. It learned one truth. Never wake the quiet species. From the small blue world. Never spill their blood. Never ignore their warnings. Because when you do, the fire does not rage. It plans. It waits. It ends you. They murdered Earths. The ambassador's warning marked the start of annihilation. A single small ship slipped out from the dark edge of the Sol system. It looked like an old courier vessel, painted dull gray, with no markings, no lights, no weapons showing on the hull. It moved slow and careful toward the outer relay station near the Orion Arm. The station belonged to the Concorde. It handled messages for thousands of worlds. It kept the Empire connected. The ship sent one short burst on every open frequency. The message played clear and calm in every language the Concorde used. Ambassador Voss warned you. Consider this reminder. No one answered at first. The station crew watched the tiny ship approach. They laughed on their private channels. They said humans sent toys now. They said the species had lost its mind. They powered up defense turrets just to be safe. Then the courier ship stopped. It hung still for 3 seconds. The hull opened in 4 places. Small pods ejected, drifted toward the station like seeds on wind. The pods looked harmless. They carried no explosives, no warheads, no visible threat. Inside the station, alarms began to sing, soft at first, then loud. The crew ran to posts. They fired point lasers. They hit every pod. They watched the pods burst into bright sparks. The sparks spread fast. They turned into thin clouds of smart dust. The dust touched the station hull. It found tiny cracks. It slipped inside. The Concorde techs shouted. They tried to seal sections. They tried to vent atmosphere. Nothing worked. The dust moved through vents, through wires, through coolant lines. It reached the main reactor. It settled on control rods. It triggered microshifts. The reactor temperature climbed fast. The crew had seconds to understand what happened. A white flash filled every screen in the relay station. Then the station folded inward. A singularity formed, small and perfect. It pulled metal hulls inward. It crushed decks. It swallowed engines. Entire structure in less than 10 heartbeats. When the light faded, nothing remained but a faint ripple in space. The relay was gone. Communication lines snapped across half the Orion arm. Thousands of worlds went dark to each other, in one stroke. Panic raced through Concorde command centers. They called it terrorism. They called it madness. They called for the fleet. Admirals gathered. They pointed at Saul. They said humans had crossed the final line. They voted to send 200 capital ships, the largest punishment fleet in 3 centuries. They would arrive at the Oort cloud. They would demand surrender. They would glass every human world that resisted. The fleet launched fast. They moved in perfect formation, huge wedge-shaped vessels with glowing drive cones. They carried weapons that could crack moons. They carried troops trained for occupation. They carried orders to make an example. The admiral in charge broadcast a message to every channel he could reach. Surrender now, or face total erasure. The Concorde will not tolerate this insult. Humanity answered. No words came back. Instead, every receiver in the fleet picked up the same loop. Ambassador Voss' final speech played over and over. This is not a plea. This is the last courtesy humanity will extend. The voice stayed calm. It stayed steady. It played without pause. The admiral ordered the sound cut. Nothing changed. The loop found new channels. It found backup lines. It found personal comms. It played inside helmets, inside bridge speakers, inside crew quarters. The fleet pushed deeper into the outer system. They passed the scattered ice bodies of the Oort cloud. They saw nothing. No defenses, no mines, no patrols. The admiral smiled. He said the humans hid. He said they feared open battle. He ordered scouts forward. The scouts never returned. One by one they vanished. Their last reports showed empty space, then silence. The admiral grew angry. He pushed the fleet faster. He wanted to reach the inner system. He wanted to see Earth burn. Then the first swarm appeared. It came from nowhere. Small shapes drifted among the asteroids. They looked like chunks of rock. They looked like debris. They moved slow until they did not. In seconds, hundreds turned. Thousands became tens of thousands. The swarm surrounded the lead ships. They attached like limpets. They burned through armor with quiet acid. They slipped into exhaust vents. They found reactors. They triggered overloads. One battleship after another went dark. No explosions. No grand fireworks. Just sudden quiet as power failed. Systems shut down. Life support stopped. Crews pounded on sealed doors. They screamed for help. No help came. The ships drifted helpless, turning slow in the black. The admiral watched his formation break. He shouted orders. He fired main guns at shadows. The guns hit nothing useful. The swarm ignored the big weapons. It went for weak points. It went for engines. It went for sensors. It went for life pods when they launched. Mercy, because mercy had never been part of the plan. A few Concorde ships tried to run. They turned tail. They pushed drives to maximum. They fled toward friendly space. They did not make it. The swarm followed. It matched speed. It attached. It finished the job. The Admiral's ship stayed last. It fought hard. Its guns blazed. Its shields flared bright. Then the swarm found the bridge access port. It poured inside. Crews fought with hand weapons. They died fast. The Admiral stood on his command deck. He watched the last of his fleet die around him. He opened a channel to Saul. He begged for terms. No answer came. The loop of Voss' voice kept playing. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. The Admiral listened until his ship lost power. He sat in the dark. He understood too late. Back in Saul's space, the swarm pulled away. It left the hulks to drift. It left beacons on each wreck. The beacons broadcast one thing only. Ambassador Voss warned you. The message repeated on every frequency. It clear. Worlds far from the battle picked up the signal. They listened. They grew quiet. The Concord leaders stared at empty screens. They had lost 200 ships in hours. They had lost contact with entire sectors. They had lost the myth of invincibility. They met in secret rooms. They argued. They blamed each other. They searched for answers. They found none. On Earth, General Kane watched the battle feeds. He saw the swarm do its work. He saw the Concord ships die one by one. He turned to his staff. They nodded. They knew the next step. They knew the galaxy would not stop now. They knew the Concord would send more. They knew humanity would meet them. In a small room on Ceres, Tariq the engineer sat at his console. He watched the same feeds. He saw the swarm succeed. He touched the screen where one drone carried Voss' voice. He smiled small. He whispered thank you. He went back to work. He had more drones to build. He had more code to write. The first retaliation ended. The reminder landed. The galaxy felt the sting. It still did not understand the full cost. It still thought it could win. It still believed humans would tire. It still believed wrong. The silence from Saul broke for the first time since the ambassador died. Not with pleas, not with threats, with action. Cold, precise, unstoppable action. The warning had begun to come true. The Concord prepared the next move. They called it cleansing. They gathered bigger fleets. They aimed bigger guns. They thought numbers would save them. They thought power would save them. They prepared to strike Luna first. They wanted to hurt humanity where it could see. They wanted to prove strength. They did not know humanity had waited for exactly that move. They did not know the real answer waited in the dark, ready to grow, ready to spread, ready to end everything the Concord had built. The stars watched. They stayed quiet. They knew what came next. They murdered Earths. The ambassador's warning marked the start of annihilation. For many weeks after the death of Ambassador Alara Voss, the galaxy turned its eyes toward the small yellow star called Sol. Nothing moved. No ships left the system. No messages came out. No fleets gathered at the edge of human space. The silence felt complete and final. Delegates in the Concord halls spoke of the matter with easy smiles. They sat in bright chambers filled with sweet air and soft music. They drank from crystal cups and said the human problem had ended itself. The ambassador had been the last bold voice. Now, only fear remained. They told each other stories of other species that had broken under one sharp lesson. Humans, it seemed, were no different. Scout probes slipped close to the Oort cloud. They watched from far away. They saw cargo ships moving between Mars and the Belt. They saw lights on Earth flicker as always. They saw no new warships rising from hidden yards. The probes sent back calm reports. The leaders read them and nodded. The Concord had won without firing another shot. Inside the Sol system, the truth looked very different. People did not scream or run through streets with wild eyes. They did not burn flags or smash screens. Instead, they worked. They worked in quiet rooms. They worked in deep tunnels. They worked on ships that looked like old freighters from the outside. Inside those ships, the changes grew fast and deadly. In a bunker under the Australian desert, General Marcus Kane stood before a wall of screens. The screens showed live feeds from every human world. He watched a factory on Titan turn mining drills into railgun barrels. He watched engineers on Europa weld armor plates thicker than any Concorde ship carried. He watched children in schoolrooms study old battles, not to learn history, but to find new ways to win. Kane spoke low to the officers around him. "She gave us time," he said. "She bought us weeks with her life. We will not waste them. We build slow. We build smart. When we move, the galaxy will not see us coming until it is too late." Across the asteroid belt, hidden yards glowed with weld sparks. Workers wore plain suits, but their hands moved with purpose. They took civilian haulers and rebuilt them into carriers. They filled cargo holds with drones that looked like rocks until they opened and spat death. They loaded missiles with warheads that ate through shields like acid. They tested nothing loud, nothing showed on long-range scans. On Luna, in sealed domes, scientists ran simulations. They fed every scrap of data from the broadcast of Voss's death. They studied the plasma lance. They measured its power. They learned its weak points. They built small models that failed on purpose so the failures could teach them. They turned each mistake into a weapon. In the Pacific, a research ship floated quiet. It carried no weapons on deck. Inside it held the first prototype of something new, a device that folded space in small, sharp ways, could send a signal or a bomb through distances that should take days. The team called it Whisper because it moved without sound. They tested it once. It worked. They hit it again. Families knew something had changed. Parents spoke soft to their children. They said the stars had turned hard. They said humans must stand together now. Grandparents told stories of old wars on Earth, stories of people who refused to break, stories that ended with victory, not surrender. The children listened. They drew pictures of ships and stars. They asked questions that made adults think harder. In hidden data centers, AI minds woke fully for the first time. They had slept for years, watching markets and weather. Now they watched war. They ran billions of paths. They found the ones where humanity survived. They found the ones where humanity struck first. They shared the best paths with human commanders. No one argued. The machines had no pride. They only wanted the species to live. One night on Ceres, engineer named Tariq sat alone in a small control room. He stared at a hollow display of Thrax Prime. He replayed the moment the lance struck Voss. He watched her body fall again. He did not cry. He felt something colder than anger. He felt clarity. He turned to his console and added one more line of code to the swarm drones. It made them smarter. It made them angrier in a machine way. He saved the file and whispered her name. The Concorde grew bored with watching Sol. They turned back to their own affairs. They held festivals. They signed new trade deals. They repaired old grudges between member worlds. They told jokes about the tiny human who thought she could scare an empire. They laughed loud because laughter felt safe. A few voices spoke against the easy mood. Old admirals who had studied lost wars said silence could hide many things. Younger diplomats who had met humans said the species did not act like others. They did not bow fast. They did not beg. They rebuilt. They waited, listened. Some laughed louder to cover the doubt. Scout probes kept their watch. They drifted closer each week. They saw supply runs. They saw lights. They saw routine. Routine looked like peace. The probes sent happy reports. The leaders read them and drank more. They said the lesson had landed deep. On Earth, in a quiet house near the rebuilt city of Tokyo, an old woman named May sat by a window. She had known Alara when the ambassador was still a student. May held a small recording chip. It carried Alara's voice from years ago, a simple message. "Happy birthday, teacher. Hope the stars treat you kind. May played it once. She listened, she closed her eyes, she did not play it again. She stood up, she walked to her desk. She opened a drawer, she took out blueprints she had kept hidden for decades. She carried them to the nearest shuttleport. She handed them to a young pilot. She said, "Use these." The pilot nodded and left. Days turned to weeks. The galaxy relaxed. The Concorde posted guards at every embassy, but fewer than before. They said the danger had passed. They said humans had learned their place. In the shadow of Jupiter, a new ship slipped from its cradle. It looked like any bulk freighter. It carried no markings. It carried no flags. Its engines ran cold until the moment it needed speed. Inside its holds waited rows of sleek black drones. Each drone held a copy of Alara, Final Warning. Each drone knew exactly what to do when the time came. A single transmission left Sol. It went out on a narrow beam, aimed at no one. It carried 3 words only. They heard. Nothing more followed. The beam shut off. The sender vanished back into silence. The Concorde sensors caught the signal. They traced it. They found nothing. They shrugged. They said it meant fear. They said humans whispered because they could not shout. They did not understand. The whisper was not fear. It was the sound of a blade being sharpened. Across every human colony, people stopped what they did for 1 minute. They stood still. They thought of the woman who died on Thrax Prime. They thought of her calm face. They thought of her last words. They did not pray. They did not curse. They simply remembered. Then they went back to work. The fire she lit burned steady. It needed no fuel from rage. It fed on memory, on plan, on patience. The galaxy saw only dark skies over Sol. It saw no flames. It saw no armies. It saw nothing worth fear. That was exactly what humanity wanted. The silence grew heavier. The weeks stretched longer. The Concorde smiled wider. They believed they had crushed the spark. They believed wrong. Deep in the dark between stars, the first pieces moved. Pieces so small no one noticed. Pieces that would soon grow into something unstoppable. The warning had not died with her. It waited. It learned. It prepared. And when the moment came, the galaxy would hear it clear. The huge meeting hall on Thrax Prime glowed with soft blue light from floating crystals high above the heads of hundreds of alien delegates. Every species in the Galactic Concorde had sent their highest voice to this emergency session. The air smelled sharp, like metal and old spice, because so many different bodies breathed in the same closed space. At the center stood a single human woman. Ambassador Elara Voss wore a plain gray uniform, with no medals or bright colors. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her face showed calm lines that came from years of hard choices. She looked small next to the tall insect-like Krell, or the massive stone-skinned Goraf. Yet her voice carried clear across the wide chamber when she spoke. The Concorde leaders had already voted before she arrived. They called humans a problem. Humans spread too fast. They built ships without asking. They took empty worlds and made them live. They asked questions that made old empires feel uneasy. Either humans gave up their outer colonies and accepted watchers from the Concorde, or the Concorde would remove them completely. Elara knew the truth when she stepped onto the transport pad back on Earth. She had read the secret reports. She had seen the patterns in old wars. The Concorde did not like loose ends. They liked control. They planned to kill her here today, not because she broke rules, but because her death would send a message to every human back home. She accepted the job anyway, because someone had to carry the words. She walked to the speaking platform without guards. The platform rose slowly until she stood eye level with the tallest delegates. A hush fell over the room. Even the clicking mandibles of the insect delegates went quiet. Elara looked straight at the high speaker, a tall, thin creature with skin like polished silver. She spoke in the common trade tongue, slow and clear, so every translation device caught every word. You call us primitives, lives, and think we break easy. You see our scattered ships and think we fight alone. You are wrong. She paused for one breath, then continued. Humans learn from pain. We remember every scar, every lost home, every friend turned to dust. We do not forget. We do not forgive threats that come to our door. A low rumble moved through the crowd. Some delegates laughed, short, sharp sounds. Others shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the direct words. Alara raised one hand, palm open. This is not a plea. This is the last kindness humanity will give you. If you kill me here today,